Tom Cruise and aviators, roast beef and gravy, electric and Rolls-Royce. These are combinations that just work. They belong together. In fact, I'm slightly surprised that it's taken Rolls-Royce this long to introduce their first electric car, because over 100 years ago, one of its founders, Charles Rolls, said this: "The electric car is perfectly noiseless and clean. There is no smell or vibration. They should become very useful when fixed charging stations can be arranged." Yeah, still working on that last one, Charles. But he was right, and that combination of effortless torque, creamy smooth power delivery, and total silence is precisely what Rolls-Royce has been trying to coax out of its V12 engines for decades. A pure electric vehicle should be all Rolls' dreams come true, which is why Rolls-Royce has been flirting with EVs for a while. The 102EX concept in 2011 worked fine, but had a range of not very much, while the 103EX in 2016 envisaged a much more radical driverless future. The Spectre, by comparison, is a relatively normal Rolls-Royce. And this is it, the first ever pure electric Rolls-Royce, and it's called the Spectre. What do you think? It's big, isn't it? Over 5 meters long, 2 meters wide. But that's the point, of course. I actually got the chance to talk to the CEO, Torsten Müller-Opvos, when I was riding around in a prototype of this in Arjeplog, Sweden, and he told me he didn't just want to do an electrified version of the Cullinan or the Phantom. He wanted to make an impact, to do something new and brave and bold, and it certainly does that, especially in this new chartreuse paint colour. Let's come around the front, because we need to talk about the details. And where else can you start with the Rolls-Royce but at the front with the face? It defines the whole car. And straight away, the way that this bonnet tapers down and rolls over the front grille gives you a clue that this car is concerned with aero. And we'll start there with the grille, because if this was a Phantom, of course, they have much taller, much more upright grilles, totally bluff, very imposing. This is much shorter, but it is the widest grille that they've ever had on a Rolls-Royce, and even the vanes here give it away, because normally they're square and straight and upright and perpendicular to the direction of travel, but here they're angled and tapered away, suggesting that this car wants to whoosh the air out to the sides. And speaking of whooshing the air, the Spirit of Ecstasy, it's gone through a complete overhaul. 830 hours of design and development and wind tunnel work for this. And actually, if you look very closely, she normally sits in the middle of her ball here, but she's shuffled towards the front, and she's in much more crouching position, and she's sticking her nose into the air. It's probably not going to give you tens of extra miles range, but it's a nice touch nonetheless. Come down the side, lots more to talk about, starting with these wheels. So they are 23 inches, the biggest wheels that have ever been fitted to a Rolls-Royce. The biggest wheels, the first time, in fact, 23-inch wheels have been fitted to a coupe since the Bugatti Royale in 1926. Didn't think you were going to get a fact like that today, did you? Coming down the side of the car again, and it's in profile actually that you get a full appreciation of the volume of this thing. Long wheelbase, of course, to fit in all the batteries under there, but it's enormous. The clever thing that Rolls-Royce's designers have done is to use 3 lines to define the shape. They call these the silhouette line at the top, the shoulder line here, and the waft line at the bottom. You see, I was concentrating. And here, the shoulder line and the waft line taper towards the front of the car, which is what gives it that dynamic stance towards the front. A couple more things to show you around the back. The first is these, the protruding tail lights, which look fantastic, but I particularly like the way that the casing for them appears to have been shaped by the wind just whipping off these flanks here like that. And the second is the way that everything just tapers towards the rear here, and that's accentuated by this two-tone paint job. It's something Rolls-Royce calls aero two-tone. It uses it for the bonnet, the roof, and the boot lid here. And speaking of aero, this car has a drag coefficient of 0.25. Now, to put that in some sort of context, that's the same as a Honda Insight. Which is why, despite being the size of a boat, Rolls is promising more than 310 miles of range from a charge. No official word on battery size or power yet. Our educated guess though is the 105 kilowatt hour pack from the top spec BMW i7 and iX with around 600 horsepower. What we do know is that it's all-wheel drive, has all-wheel steering, and the 700 kilogram battery sits in the floor pan of Rolls' aluminium platform and acts as sound deadening. Handy. Overall weight? About 2.9 tons. Yikes. It's probably worth mentioning now that range concerns for your average Rolls-Royce buyer probably aren't the same as range concerns for you and I. These cars are unlikely to be doing any cannonball runs from London to Edinburgh. They're mostly going to be used in and around town. The buyer is going to have charging at home and in the office. Anyway, let's have a look at the interior. Rear hinge doors, but of course. And then we get to the really exciting stuff. So you'll be aware of Rolls-Royce's Starlight headliner. Now we've got Starlight doors, and here they are. 4,800 individually lit stars, that's in total across this door card, the passenger door card, and in the back of the car. It's still undergoing development, they're still working on the distribution and how they light the lights, but it already looks magnificent. And then we get to the seats themselves, and this is an all-new design for the Spectre, and you can see here how you can really play around with the personalisation and the use of colour here. So this has got chartreuse leather in the middle to match the exterior colour. You've got peony pink on the lapels, and that's all set against grace white. But equally, you could have some fun. You could take this colour right up to here and create a bucket seat within a seat, if that's your thing. Right, let's get in. Oh yes. Oh, that's nice. Right, what else can I tell you about this interior, apart from the fact that these seats are just ridiculous. I could fall asleep right now if I didn't have to talk to you. And these carpets, look at these. Look how thick and luxurious they are. That's just ridiculous. Now, the first thing you've probably noticed is the fact that this car has a spine, a transmission tunnel, when it doesn't need one, because it's an electric car, but it shares the architecture of luxury, the aluminium platform, with the Phantom. So this spine here helps with the rigidity of the chassis. It also gives you somewhere to put your rotary controller, somewhere to put your stuff, and they've even managed to squeeze a few extra batteries into the underneath of this spine. In front of me, well, we've got the first ever fully digital Rolls-Royce instrument cluster. The Phantom has digital instruments, of course, but it has a physical chrome ring around them. We've got another screen in the middle of the dash that is a touch screen, as well as being controlled down here by the dial. And there's another screen over here in front of the passenger, but that just displays a lovely Spectre logo. In terms of audio, well, it's got a bespoke in-house built Rolls-Royce audio system, and I'm told this car will make noises when you're driving along, but it just hasn't been finalised what those noises are. In terms of driving modes, it doesn't have any. It doesn't have anything as uncouth as a sport mode or anything like that. You just have this lever here that has reverse, neutral and drive, and a single button on it that says B. That's because you can drive this without any brake regen, so it coasts when you lift off the throttle, or you hit that button and you can effectively do one pedal driving. And most importantly, does it still have an umbrella in the door? Well, let's find out. Yes, of course it does. There it is. You can order one of these now if you like, and if you do so, you should get your car towards the end of next year. Now, in terms of money, I'm told it sits somewhere between Cullinan and Phantom, which my pocket calculator tells me is north of 300 grand. Although if you want a car spec like this one, it's more like 375. But then that's what you'd expect from Rolls-Royce, isn't it? And that's the thing about this car, that the headline, the electric powertrain, is radical, but really, it's a car that plays to the brand's strength. It's just another stonking new Rolls-Royce that happens to run on electricity. Simple.